Okay, so welcome everyone. I'm Michaela. I am um, the founder and one of the co-owners of GC Prep. We have a lot to cover tonight, right? There's a lot to know about getting prepped for interviews. It is not the same as prepping for a job interview. Those are very different circumstances and different information that you want to get across. So we're going to go through all of that. I'm just going to introduce Janelle here, who is one of my co-owners. She is going to be given our webinar today, and what an amazing person. Like 10 out of 10, highly recommend. Yay, Janelle. Okay. Janelle was the um, assistant program director at Sarah Lawrence over admissions for a variety of years and has her fingers in many entrepreneur pies and is just a wonderful person in general. So extremely knowledgeable. Janelle, you've probably read hundreds of
100,
applications, hundreds,
100,
if not
probably
thousands.
almost 1,000. Yeah, at this
Yeah,
point.
yeah. So lots and lots of experience there to go on. And that experience and the experience of our other coaches as well has all fed into what we're recommending here. But the main takeaways are there's no one size fits all. There's no exactly specific correct wording that you have to use, but we're trying to give you guidelines here, okay? They are looking for certain types of information. And so what we're going to be doing here is covering like what the actual interview goals are, right? So what are they looking for? What are you looking for? How to demystify some of the scariness around those interviews. We're going to be talking about how to prepare for your interview big days. Okay. We're going to cover some common interview questions, and then we'll talk about where to find some additional support and what kind of coaching GC prep options and why someone might want that. In general, the main takeaway, spoiler alert, right, is get help, even if it's not with us. Just get help somewhere because practicing will help you prepare better and make this whole process less scary. Okay. So Janelle, with that, I'm going to turn it over to you. And if anyone has any questions kind of as we go along, feel free to pop them in the chat because I will be kind of answering those as we go.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Michaela. I paid her to say all of those nice things. No, just kidding. I am happy to be with all of you. And yeah, I was in charge of admissions for over 7 years at Sarah Lawrence. There were about 200, between 2 and 300 applications each year. So yeah, that's definitely over 1,000. So yeah, I didn't even think of it until you mentioned it. So I've seen a lot of things, and you guys have done a lot already. You've done enough. You've now been invited for an interview. Congratulations to those of you who have received your invitations. And there are several people who are still waiting, and I understand that. And I think the latest you'll see invitations going out could even be late February, to be honest. So you're in the right place if you're like, all right, here we go. I want to get some information to help me along the way. And so I would say these 6 bullet points really and truly get at the heart of what every single program is looking for in their applicants. How they ask questions and how they figure out these 6 things is a little bit different each time, but they're really trying to get an understanding of your passion, your academic abilities, your empathic nature, how teachable you are, brave or like growth mindset, how you deal with challenges, and your insight into the fields and even yourself. These are the big 6 things that they're trying to identify. And so how you respond to what has happened in your life and your story is really the biggest thing to really start thinking about. Any challenges that you've been through, any experiences that you've had, just think about what they meant to you, why they meant what they meant to you, and things will be a lot easier during your conversations or during your interviews, which should feel like a conversation while you're on them. So, what to do to prepare before? Think about what part of the day you tend to be your best. I love this thing actually because or this point rather because I feel that most people aren't even thinking about this. But for sure, if you haven't scheduled your interview yet, this is when you should schedule it when you're at your best. You should understand how long the interview is, budget, time, your attention. Find out who your interviews are, if at all possible. I know some programs intentionally do not put who the interviewer will be because they don't want to create any bias amongst who the interviewers are. And then some do tell you. And so certainly looking them up and finding out what their interests are, what do they do in the world of genetic counseling is helpful, gives you something, maybe perhaps something in common that you guys can talk about during the interview. So just trying to find out as much information as possible, not only about the interviewer, but about the program is really important. Reasons why you think that this school is a great fit for you, because you are also interviewing them. And I know you hear people say that all the time, but it is a real thing. So really and truly try to figure out as much as you can what makes this program a good fit for you. And if you feel like that's still kind of fuzzy, put that in your pocket for a question that you can ask them because they certainly will ask you, and what questions do you have for us? And so that could be one of them. What do you think makes this program unique? Or what are one of the things about this program? What are the one of the unique things about this program do you enjoy? Right? That could be something that you just kind of hold in your back pocket for an extra question to ask. Um, Yes, all of these, all of this, research the program is essentially the point. That's what you really need to do before you get there. Okay, and then it comes to you and your experiences, and trying to really explore what those experiences have meant for you, um, what kind of emotions you felt, whether this is shadowing experience in your work or your volunteer work. You really want to know what are the things that you learned? What are some key highlights that have stayed with you and made an impact, and not just an impact, but anything that made an impact or resonated with you really strongly. And sometimes, inversely, what is something that made an impact on you because you can't believe that you saw someone do something that maybe you feel like you would never have done? That is just as important as anything that you feel like really resonated and like, oh man, I can't wait to do something like that or be trained to be able to interact with patients in a particular way. So those types of things, really think about them. Think about what kind of thinking process that you were going through in the moment and then how you kind of dealt with it in the moment, but then also afterwards. Think about why you felt the way that you felt. If you could have done something differently, what maybe you would have done differently. All of those things are things that you should definitely reflect on. And in terms of graduate school, if it's the right fit for you, I just want to put this out there. This is like my PSA announcement. If I had to get on a soapbox, this is the thing that I would say. Grad school is hard. Grad school is hard. I just want people to know that up front. And so you have to understand that you're going to be taking classes, but you're also going to be like living life. So you have to also deal with maybe roommates. You have to figure out what you're going to study for versus, having that phone call with somebody back at home who's having some sort of crisis that you need to handle. And, you just used your last pair of underwear, today. So you got to wash clothes. Like all of this is happening at the same time while you have exams to study for, while you have clinical rotations to go to. This is all happening at the same time. And so it could be a really, really challenging. So it's just important to understand, okay, this is what I'm about to walk into, but there's a reason why. There's a reason why I'm still running towards this as the field, the profession, the career path that I want to take. Because I recognize that there's going to be challenges, but I know why it's worth it on the other side of it. So reconnecting with that is going to be really important for you. And it's also contextually the reason why a growth mindset is really important for every program director to kind of get a sense for you. Because if you've dealt with challenges before, then that means you've grown from it, you've learned from that experience. Grad school is also hard, so they want to make sure that you have this ability to learn from experiences, to learn from mistakes and failures and challenges and how you overcame all of that. So getting a sense as to how you've dealt with it before will help them get a sense as to what you might be like in the program, no matter what program it is. All right. So yes, with GC prep, we have all sorts of things, and we'll talk about that near the end, but I wanted to lean into this particular part in terms of prepping for the interview day. Okay, certainly, do whatever you can to feel the best, feel like the best, most confident version of you. Meditation, breathing exercises, dancing. I'm a big dancer, so to get out my jitters, I will put on like a song that I really like and just like dance my heart out just to like get the jitters out. But that might be different from you, for you. Maybe you need to do the breathing exercises. I highly recommend box breathing. And I will tell you this, scientifically speaking, so box breathing, if you don't know it, it's like you hold for a count of, let's say five, for example, and then you breathe in for a count of five, then you hold for a count of five, and then you breathe out for a count of five, and then hold for five. So you continually do that for the same counts. If all of it is the same, that's neutral and it keeps you on a steady path. So breathing in for five, hold for five, breathe out for five, hold for five, and you do that about three times. However, if you breathe out for longer than you breathe in, it actually calms you down. So if you're feeling extremely anxious, I would recommend breathing out for maybe six or seven. If you're gonna breathe in for five, and then continue to hold for five throughout the two different holds. Anyway, I say all that to say, scientifically, it has been proven that when you breathe out for longer than you breathe in, it actually calms you down. So if you're feeling extremely anxious, it's a quick, free thing. Nobody even knows you're doing it that you can do right before each of your interviews. Okay, so practice, practice, practice. If you can, we're going to talk about things to practice and what, and in terms of what you want to say. Sometimes when you say things out loud, or sorry, when you say things in your head, they come out different when you say them out loud. So certainly practice, but you don't want to sound too rehearsed. So that's why we highly, highly recommend don't read from your notes. We've actually seen people do this, believe it or not, and it's very distracting because we can see you. We can see where your eyes go, and they like constantly go to the side while you're like reading notes. We can tell. We can tell. So as best as you can, try to continue to have some self-awareness. Um, Listen to your interviewer. Try not to I know, and I get it, like you're excited or you may be nervous, and sometimes people over talk the interviewer or talk over the interviewer. But if at all possible, try to just listen and try to stay as calm as you can. If you receive certain things from the interviewer, that's also really important for you to take note of. So any insensitivities, any microaggressions, any type of attitude or even vibe that you feel like is just off, I would just note that down. So that way you can come back to that later when you're reflecting on your interview and say like, it went well, but this happened or that happened. And you just want to take notice of that because that may reflect on where you end up ranking the program later. And certainly trying to figure out if the students are happy, that's really important. Okay, what else? Ooh, ooh, ooh. A lot of people wonder about this. They're like, "Oh, should I tell them that I'm applying to other programs?" Yeah, just tell people. Every program knows that you've applied to more than one program, so it's totally fine to say. And if anything, if you feel like really uncomfortable about talking about any more specifics than just saying, yes, I've also applied to other schools, you can pivot it back to, I'm thinking about, a couple of other programs, but I'm really excited about yours. Particularly, this one aspect about your program seems really appealing to me. Or could you talk to me more about this particular aspect? So you can totally flip the question around if that makes you feel uncomfortable. But just know that everyone's basically expecting you to say yes. So you don't have to feel uncomfortable about sharing or trying to like hide the truth or anything like that. Certainly talk about it. Okay, these are some of the most common questions that you will get. So it makes sense. And somebody asked this at the very beginning. I know not all of you were on, but the tell me about yourself question, how do you handle that? So let's get into some of that. You do not have to get into your CV. Essentially, no one's expecting you to repeat what's on your CV. So if anything, try to keep it short. You're not going to talk for a really long time, but you want to think about qualities or highlighting certain qualities that aren't necessarily on your CV. So think about qualities like, oh, I'm a really empathic person, I'm open-minded, I have a good work ethic, any of these things that are listed here. But what I'll just say is that you want to prove it. So you don't want to just say it and just keep going. You want to say, oh, I'm really empathic. I tend to be an empathic person, for example, and then give an example. You want to prove what you're saying essentially, because honestly, that's what the interviewer is thinking. Oh, really? You're empathic? Prove it. Like, how do I know? So Whatever quality or skill that you mentioned, just come up with one example. For example, I did blah, 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 or when I did this, da, 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 da. If you know where you might want to see yourself practicing as a genetic counselor after you graduate, certainly you can add that too. And I would say one of the really nice bonuses is when someone's able to tie all of that also with any hobbies that they may have or any self-care practices that you find are really helpful for you. This is one of those things where they find out a little bit more about you than what's on the CV. And sometimes they find something about you that they have in common with you, and finding common ground with an interview is a wonderful thing. So sharing about yourself, just remember it's not about your CV. It's really just talking more about qualities about yourself, a little bit of proof, not a ton of examples, just one, and sharing anything that you like to do that's a little bit maybe outside of genetic counseling. So this is an example. Please do not think you need to give this example. But it's just so you guys can understand like the flow. I've always been a pretty driven person academically, but I didn't really get excited about any course of study until I found genetics. While my initial background was in cytogenetics, I just felt something was missing. I felt the science was too distant from the patient and I wanted to do more. When I found genetic counseling, I knew it was a profession that would keep my mind engaged while also allowing me to use my passion for advocacy and patient care. And that was confirmed for me in my shadowing experience. At this point, I'm ready to apply my active listening skills and enthusiasm for social justice in medicine while in grad school. And I hope to land a prenatal job after graduation. I find joy and recenter myself hiking and spending time with the people I care about. So the red just highlights the qualities. The yellow are things that are important to you, and the green are goals, things that you want to do or could see yourself doing in the future. So this is basically, if you want to take a screenshot of this, like I would say, if anything, this might be the one because it's just like the template, right? If you were gonna like fill in your own stuff, this is what that would look like. I'm a quality, 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 right? So this will be helpful for you to frame it. And then when you start to practice, obviously you're not gonna memorize this thing, but it's just kind of like bullet points that you keep in your mind. Like, oh, okay, if someone asks me, like, tell me about myself, these are the things that I want to make sure that I mention. Why do you want to be a genetic counselor? Another extremely common question. And I've said this before. Please don't say that you love genetics and you like to help people. And then I told people this, and then I literally read a personal statement that said this. I know you're not supposed to say that you love genetics and like tell people, but I really do. And I was like, oh man. So we get it. We basically are assuming that if you are applying to a genetic counseling program, that you love genetics and you love to help people. So it's more about showing that you understand the value that genetic counseling can bring to a patient or the medical setting where you are. Um, these are just some examples. I love one, had a bad experience in medicine, briefly explain what the bad experience is. And a lot of that could have been avoided if they'd had a genetic counselor. Um, Perhaps you're passionate about helping people, making decisions. Perhaps you're comfortable with having difficult conversations or conversations where there's some ambiguity or um, yeah, ambiguity or just uncertainty. Like if that's your jam, then like certainly, lean into that and talk about that. If you're from an underrepresented group and if you want to do more to help people from your community that may or may not have the same access to genetic services as the majority do, then that could be something else about why you want to be a genetic counselor. So there are lots of other reasons, but really it comes down to your insight into genetic counseling is what's going to make this answer very appealing or memorable to the interviewer. So I have a formula for insights. Some of you may have heard it already. And if you have already heard it already, you can put a Y in the comment section. I'm really curious to see how many of you already heard this. If this is your first time, you're going to want to write this down. But you know that you have insight into genetic counseling if you can answer the following questions. What, how, and why? And so you might be thinking, it's too simple, Janelle. It can't just be It can't just be that. And you're right. Though that's basically the bones. I'll give you a little bit more meat on this, and that is you're going to need the what because without that, you're not going to be able to answer the how and the why. But the what is basic. Let's say you were interviewing a genetic counselor, for example. I won't even say in-person shadowing, but if you were interviewing a genetic counselor, you find out, okay, well, what did you do today? Well, I saw a patient. The patient was a little bit emotional about what was going on. We helped the patient feel better. I assessed to see if the patient qualified for genetic testing, and we went ahead and facilitated that testing. So that's the what. And a lot of people get excited about that, and that's where they leave it. They're like, "Oh my God, they saw this patient. The genetics was so cool. They made the patient feel better." And people get really excited about that. And that is probably the most superficial level of understanding what is going on with genetic counseling. So that's the what. Now you have the how. Well, how did they do what they did? Well, it turns out that, again, the patient was emotional. And so the genetic counselor was empathic during some parts of the session and more educational in other parts of the session, which helped the patient feel better. They did assess to see whether whether the patient met the requirements for genetic testing, and they used a particular tool to help to determine that. The patient then went ahead and got testing, and they could have sent the tests they could have done either a blood test or a buccal. They decided to do buccal, and they could have sent to lab A or B, and they sent to lab B. So now you're getting a little bit more information. That's like the how they did what they did. And so it's a little bit more interesting. The why is why. Why did they do any of the things that they did? Why? Why did they decide to be empathic during some parts of the session and more educational during other parts of the session? Why did they decide to use a particular word to describe something? I never would have thought to use that word. Why did they use that word? Why did they decide to do buccal instead of blood? Oh, well, it turns out that the patient's been getting pricked all over the place and was tired of it. And the sensitivity is the same, whether it's a buccal or whether it's blood. So they decided to do buccal. And then why did they send to lab B? Well, it turns out that there's a contract between the lab and the hospital. And so they have to send to that lab. Or maybe it's cheaper in terms of their insurance. But why? Why are they doing any of the things that they're doing? And so that is where things get really interesting once you start to find out the why. Genetic counselors love talking about why they do what they do. Sometimes they don't have the time to talk about it, but if you can get them to, this is why interviews are kind of cool because they usually have more time to get into it. But if you can answer all of these questions, you will have insight coming out of you without you even trying. It'll just like flow out organically. And so when someone asks, why do you want to be a genetic counselor? You know all of these things that these things that genetic counselors do, why they do the things that they do, and how it aligns with your values or how you like envision yourself in the future. Like you can't wait to do these things or be trained to do these things. Like it'll just come out of you. So this insight formula is really powerful. And if you haven't thought of it already, please think about the experiences that you've had using this formula, and it'll be really, really helpful for you. Okay. Tell me about a time when you were in a conflict. What did you do? So this is really helpful because this is kind of that growth mindset. Are you teachable? It kind of gets to that part of what they're trying to get to know about you. So this may sound different depending on who's asking the question. It can be asked in different ways. So these are just some examples, like a time when you were very uncomfortable, or a time when you didn't agree with somebody, something of that nature. Maybe even a time when you tried to do something and it like you failed. You were like, "Oof, that conversation did not go the way that I planned," right? Any of those types of things are geared towards this kind of questioning, where they're just trying to understand your teachability, your growth mindset, that type of a thing. Um, Focus on how you processed this experience. What emotions were you going through? What are some of the things that you were thinking? And then any actions that you chose because of the way that you synthesized your thoughts or your emotions during that time. Those are the things that are the most important. Any kind of, and this is what I learned from this. This is what I took away from this experience. Those are the things that you should really focus on and try to really get a good command of exactly what it was. I remember I was working with somebody recently, and the question was like, what did you learn or talk about a time when you received feedback and what did you learn from that feedback? And it was really interesting. He was able to describe what he learned and how he like changed for himself. And that was amazing because that shows like, oh, there was time thought about what had just happened or what the feedback he was given, how he may be coming across to others, and then he took steps to really change the like his attitude and thus his behavior afterwards. That shows a lot of insight. It really does. Bonus, if you can also reflect on the feedback itself and how you receive feedback and what that's like for you, things that you've noticed. I really do well when I receive a particular type of feedback. Eh, you can look up the different types of feedback. I won't get into that now. I don't have time. But that kind of thing is like bonus if you can even go a little bit deeper in terms of feedback itself. So these are the types of things that they're looking for. They want to see that you've learned. They want to see what were you thinking, feeling, and then any actions or behaviors that changed, the lessons that you've learned because of what you went through in your experience. This applies here too. So the insight formula works when you're talking about genetic counseling experiences, but it also counts here. So what happened? How did it happen? And the why. All of that goes here too. So what would sound like I saw a case with a child with delays and the mom had a few other pregnancy losses. It was a hard case because of the language barrier and they needed an interpreter. But it was still super interesting. That's just like what happened, right? The how. I saw a pediatric case that was challenging because of the language barrier. Even using an interpreter was going poorly because the patient spoke a dialect that they were less familiar with. I was feeling stressed just watching, but the counselor remained calm and just communicated the basic ideas through the interpreter and got the patient to a decent level of understanding. But I also got to see how the GC works within the whole clinic team to discuss testing. So that was interesting, right? So this is kind of like how you felt and also it's like how the counselor did what they did, and then the why. I sat in on a session that ended up being really stressful for me. It was a pediatric case, but there was an intense language barrier because the patient spoke a rare dialect that the interpreter wasn't super familiar with. Even though the counselor was calm, I was getting stressed because of the communication issue, and I could see that the patient was extremely withdrawn. I was actually really worried if she was even understanding the information in a meaningful way. I'm not sure exactly what I would have done since I'm not a GC yet, but I feel like the counselor was a little nonchalant about the whole situation. And that case stuck with me because I just wonder if that was the best patient care. So there's a lot of like why you felt what you were feeling based on what occurred in the session, right? So this is getting a little bit deeper, and this shows insight in yourself. And this is really important too, your self-awareness. Okay, so this is a list of other common questions. I am not going to go over all of these. You guys can read these, but these are really, really common. And the point of looking over these and why we're giving you these common questions is so that way you can start thinking about how you would answer them. Sometimes you get a question and you're like, oh, that's a good question. And you have to think on the spot. Just think that that will probably happen every once in a while. But, ooh, did I skip some? Oh, wait. No. But if you can at all start thinking about how you would answer some of these other common ones, I think it would be really helpful for you and probably build up your confidence. So you recognize like, oh, it's okay. Like I can answer the questions that they ask me. I got this. I will say these last two, what do you believe you'll be contributing to our program? And also, how do you see yourself contributing to the profession? These two probably catch some people off guard because they're thinking so much about themselves and maybe just like getting into the program. The idea of thinking, how can you contribute to your classmates or even to the profession in the future throws people off because they just haven't thought that far. So I would actually take some time to think about that. You may be asked something about how you can contribute and what do you want to do in the future. And that's just as important to know. Okay, things to ask the interviewer. This is important because you will be asked, do you have any questions for me? And so if nothing else, please have some questions ready to ask them because when you don't have any questions, it depends on the interviewer, but I've had some people on my admissions committee even say like, but they didn't have any questions for me. And I thought that was like a little disappointing. So it sometimes can be seen negatively, depending, right? But sometimes you run over time, so you don't have time to, to ask the interviewer any questions. But I would say just kind of have some in your back pocket. It always looks positively on you to have some questions to ask. And so if that's your motivation, then please have some questions because you know that it could look positively on you. But the real motivation for this is because you are interviewing them as well. That's the biggest reason why you should be asking questions. It's really for you, not necessarily so that way you look good. But I get it. Everybody has different motivations. So, how closely do students work with faculty is a great question. Where are graduates currently getting jobs? This is a great question because many of you already know that the job market isn't what it used to be 5 years ago. So, I think that's a great question to ask. What is grad student life like? Are the students close to each other? Yeah, like what's that culture like is a really great question. How do students usually balance coursework and other responsibilities? Another great question. I gave you the other bonus question earlier. If you missed it, what I said is you can ask, oh, I'm really curious, like what's a unique thing about the program that you really enjoy or find really interesting or that you like, any of the above. Something about asking them what they find interesting. Another question that you can also ask, less about the program, just more about them. Like, tell me what you really enjoy about your role as a genetic counselor. What are some of the things that you enjoy? So any of those work. Keep those in your back pocket. But they're super helpful in you interviewing them to get a sense as to what their program is like, as well as the bonus that it does reflect positively on you. Okay, personal emergencies, they happen. They do. And I've had people get in contact with us and let us know about some of these things. Um, any of these that are given here, we've also had people tell us that this happened the day of their interview, and they were sharing it with us because they wanted to know that they may seem off, and they just wanted us to know that this is the reason why. Um, This is not because like you're trying to gain points or anything. It's just real. Like you just had some crazy thing happen in your life and it may impact how you come across to the interviewers, right? You're not your typical self. And so it's just more like you sharing. It does allow for an exchange of empathy to develop. They, are knowing instead of knowing something that has happened in the past is kind of like hot off the press. This is going on right now in my life. And most importantly, if you share this, then you won't have to feel like you have to pretend. It'll take some of that edge off of you as well, because you don't need to carry that. You really don't. You can share so that way you can kind of just let that go and you won't need to necessarily pretend. Um, yeah, definitely don't use it for these things at the bottom. That would be no. These are pretty trivial and no one would take you seriously. If you need to, if also with the emergencies at the top, sometimes you need to reschedule. And so, yes, tell somebody immediately as possible, and as soon as you know about any of those major things, to see if you can get it rescheduled at all. People are very understanding of those types of things and would try as best they can to accommodate if any one of those emergencies recently happened. And again, if you still get to the interview, you can share it with them. That's really helpful. It'll be helpful for everyone. Oh man, we got here fast. I was speeding. I was so
You did a
worried
great job.
about fun.
We had a lot to cover. We covered a lot of ground. We were not sure if we were going to go over. Um, I still have an opportunity to make this go long. I'm going to try to keep it short. But thank you so much, Janelle. And
No
thank you
problem.
to the people who dropped questions in the chat. So there's a lot of information there. We blew through that. And this is information and stuff that just practicing it and getting a sense of how to do it properly can take a while. Okay. So you're not going to leave this webinar feeling like I am totally prepared, right? Like that's not the point of the webinar. The point of the webinar is to show you like, hey, here's opportunities to work on this, right? Here's where to prepare. Here's how to prepare. But no one's leaving this all set to go. Okay. So let's talk about how we actually take all of that and put it into practice. Because all of that was really good in theory and might have made sense with the examples that we gave, but you have different examples, right? Everyone has different experiences and different things on their CV, and that's why schools, they want to see that you've done the prerequisites and that you've put in the effort, but when it comes to like individual experiences, they don't really give a shit because all you guys have different ones. Okay. What they care about is what you learned from it. Okay. So that's why we need to learn how to do this insight. That's how we need to learn how to dig up why it mattered to you, why it's memorable to you. And that is actually a lot of what we're doing in the coaching that we provide through GC Prep. Okay. Um, and just so you guys know, our last match day in 2025, we take a look at all of the data, all the people who have had coaching with us and who matched, and 89% of people who had mock interviews ended up matching. And that was compared to the national average, which is about 62% of everyone who got interview invitations matched. But if they had at least one mock interview, it was 89%. Hooray. Okay, so significant improvement there. This absolutely does work. We've seen it year after year after year. The match rate with people who have any type of coaching through GC Prep, whether that's document reviews or mock interviews, are matching at a better rate. And the reason for that is because we are teaching you how to apply these items to your experiences. Okay, so the mock interviews that we have, they're 45 minutes. You're paying for an hour of GC time. That's so that we can review your documents ahead of time and develop some questions, some general questions that we have for everyone, but also like one specific to you. Okay, so we have an idea of where you're coming from with your application. And then it's a Zoom session, kind of like this, where we do it however you want to do it, right? So some people feel like, yeah, let's show up and just do a full straight mock interview for 20 minutes and then we'll debrief. Okay, so that is an option. I prefer the question answer feedback loop. Okay, and the reason for that is usually by the time we get done with like 20 minutes or 25 minutes of mock interview, you don't remember what you said when it comes time for the feedback. So I find that not to be the most helpful method for my learning personally, but you can choose however you want to do it. In the question answer feedback repeat style, we'll pitch you a question, you'll answer it, we'll see how you felt about it, and then we'll talk about points that were strong, or points that need to be improved, and we might also ask you some follow-up questions to make you dig deeper, right? My style as a coach is to needle a little bit. Like, but why? Why did you feel strongly? Or in that situation, I imagine you would have been feeling this. Is that right? And so we're trying to get you not to have memorized answers to the questions because you can't prepare for every possible question. Our goal is to get you guys familiar with this process of identifying your insight and understanding what that experience meant to you and why it was important across a lot of the different experiences that you've had, so that you have this catalog of experiences in your head so that when you get asked a question, you can kind of think through those experiences and then pull out the experience that best fits the situation, right? So we're teaching more of a process rather than set like verbalized responses, if that makes sense. Okay. So we have those solo mock interviews. We also have what we're calling like a limited series or like a package of mock interviews. Okay. So same type of thing, but if you know that you're going to want multiple, which if we look at the data from years past, three, 2 to 3 mock interviews is like the happy place where people tended to match, though some people want more, right? And so it's basically just like a package of mock interviews. You get it for a discount compared to paying for that many individual mock interviews. Okay. The package like that gives you this opportunity to be coached, go through that, and then go think about that in your experiences and prep on your own, and then come back and do it again. So you can see your progress over time. And that can be really helpful in putting you on the spot, getting used to that pressure that you'll feel on the days that you do have interviews. And we have these for our regular coaches. So all of us are genetic counselors, of course. So we have kind of like standard coaches, and then we also have premium coaches. And our premium coaches have been program directors or assistant program directors. Like Janelle is a premium coach. Okay. Also Janice, who just retired as the program director at Baypath, premium coach. Okay. The rest of us are not in any program leadership or have any program leadership experiences. So there's a price difference there, right? Based on experience, but we have excellent matching outcomes for everybody. So there's no wrong choice. And the bios are on the website if you have like someone that you're vibing with or someone that you think you want to work with. Okay. If you feel like you want to do a series of mock interviews or multiple ones, but you're just not quite sure, you have more specific questions, you can book an orientation meeting on the website. They're free, they're no obligation. You meet with me, right? And we just talk about what you need, what you're getting stuck on, how this might help you. Okay. Let's go next. Okay. We also have what we call long-term mentorship. And it can be anything you need it to be. Okay, so can you work on your interviewing skills? Yes, right. But they're also, this long-term mentorship is with genetic counselors who also have a life coaching certification. So they have additional tools. So if you feel like I can't give you a strength of mine, or at least one that I feel proud of, or I just struggle with confidence, or I don't know how to really describe this well in a way that I can really sell myself. If you feel like you need more holistic coaching, more growth as a person, then that's what long-term mentorship is for. You can absolutely work on your mock interviews, but it doesn't stay only in the mock interview lane. You can talk about whatever you need to talk about. Okay. So that long-term mentorship can be really great for people who need like a longer term cheerleader. And those come in packages of 4, 8, 12, 16, etc. sessions. So if that's something you're interested in, there's also a long-term mentorship coaching orientation that's free on the website as well. Okay. And then we also have educational videos on the website, and they're a great budget-friendly way to get started on all of this. I mean, this webinar was a crash course, but if you want more detail, like a more guided, here's how to think about your experiences, here's how to mine for that insight, let's just do a whole like brainstorming, information dumping session, then the educational videos are really good at that. And it's a great way to just get as much information as you can before starting with coaching, because the videos will get you like 65% of the information that you need to know. And then when you get to the one-on-one coaching, then you're getting like really high yield, really specific to you information because you've covered all of the basics and a lot of the intermediate stuff as well in the videos. Okay. Also, if you are a person of color, or if you identify as LGBTQIA+, or if you feel like you're in a low socioeconomic status, then you could get those videos for free. So on our website, you can go to the financial aid tab, and down below there is a button to complete our demographic survey. We don't publish that data anywhere, it just goes to us. And if you meet those criteria, then you will get free access to the videos. Okay. Next, here's our team. Okay, me and Janelle, there's Janice. Jessa is wonderful. She's also has a life coaching certification. Nira and Anna are super great. Shauna joined our team recently, but she's been a genetic counselor in cancer for 25-ish years, like a long time. So we have around 100 years of genetic counseling experience put together. It's a lot. We can help you, I promise. Okay. No one can guarantee that you will match. If anyone's guaranteeing that to you, they are lying. No one can guarantee that you will match. But what we can promise is that you will feel more confident going into your interviews with coaching, that you will feel more prepared and that you will do better than if you had not had any coaching. And that's true not just for us. If you get coaching elsewhere, cool, right? Just don't do it alone. Don't try to do this alone. Um, and I also recommend being careful of the Reddit or like the prospective students like Reddit or the Discord, wherever they're congregating, because this time of the year it gets crazy. Okay. So they're going to be kind of cesspools of anxiety, right? And lots of applicants are going to be trying to ask questions, and other applicants are going to be trying to give advice, but no one in there has actually matched, right? So to some degree, it's a little bit of the blind leading the blind. So if you're going into those spaces to look for resources or like guides or helps, be my guest. Go grab what you need and then off you get, right? We don't want to spend time getting dragged down into the anxiety that is going to show up on those channels and like online meeting places very soon if it's not there already. Okay. So just be aware, consume that particular media very carefully. Okay. So if you have any questions that we don't get to answer today, go ahead and email me. Support at gcprepllc.com comes straight to me. If you want more of a conversation about what could be right for you, then those coaching orientations are free and no obligation. And we're going to post this on the website in a couple of days. Okay. We have 10 minutes to do question and answer. So let's look here. Dress code. Yes. Business casual all the way, head to foot. This is not like a business on top, sweats on the bottom situation. It's just not. Okay. You don't know if something's going to disturb you and you're going to have to stand up from your chair and it's going to look super weird if you got shorts on. Okay. So there's also the mental feature of knowing that you have gotten completely ready. Okay. So you don't have to be in like business formal attire or anything like that, but we want to have some type of shirt that looks nice. This is not a t-shirt situation. We also want to have like slacks or a skirt. They probably won't see it, but you will know. Okay. So your interview outfit, blazer's totally fine. That's great. Okay. Plan your interview outfit a couple days in advance, just so you're not stressing about it the morning of. Okay. And it's okay to wear the exact same outfit for all of your interviews. Okay. You just want to be comfortable, but still look nice. Okay. If you normally wear makeup, wear your makeup. If you normally don't wear makeup, don't wear your makeup. But we want you to feel confident in the way that you're looking. Okay. So it's not the moment to try anything new as far as, makeup or fashion or anything like that goes. We want you to feel comfortable. Okay. Next question is, would you recommend a background blur, quickly decorate behind you? Any of those options. It kind of depends on the situation. If you have a door behind you that might be opened at some point by a roommate or anyone else, put a sign on there threatening their lives if they open it, right? And also probably blur your background, right? If you don't like the background blur option, that's fine. Just have it tidy behind you. You don't want anything distracting, okay? So that goes with pets too, because some people have cats, right? And like cats do what they want to do whenever they want to do it. And so if you close a door on them, they could throw a fit about that, right? So if you need to have a friend hold on to your cat for a couple hours while you have an interview so they don't pester you while you are actually in your interview, do it. Okay. So you just want to think about what you need to be at peace and not distracted so you can fully focus on your interview.
Real quick, I also just want to add to this some things that you can do in preparation. Um, if you can, I know this is not possible for everyone. So if it is at all possible for you, if you have a laptop, for example, so you're a little bit more mobile, if you can have a wall behind you instead of like the rest of the room, whatever the rest of your room looks like, then that's easier to do a fake background or a blurred background, any virtual background, if it's like a wall instead of lots of things in the background. Also, it's just less distracting because then you just know like, oh, okay, I have a wall behind me, and so that's all they're gonna see. Um, Also, lighting is important. So if you can have light in front of you, including a window, window is the best light, right? It's the natural light. You can have light in front of you, not behind you. That's really helpful. And the last thing I'll say is, which is probably the thing that people think about the least, is the positioning of their um, laptop. So one of the things that I recommend is, if at all possible, so I have a stand. So you see this? Like my head is kind of like at the bottom. Here, I'll even stop sharing so that way you guys can see. It's a little distracting. And not a lot, not like, but it's just a little. And so if you want to like just be seen the best, actually position your laptop or the camera on your phone on your screen. If you can put it down just a little bit so your head is in the middle of your square. You can bring it closer or farther, but either way, just try to make sure that your head is in the middle of the square. I prop my laptop on books. I recently got this thing that holds my laptop up. I'm not suggesting that you guys all do that now, but the point is, it's those little things that actually make a difference. It's just something else I wanted to point out. Hi, Olivia.
Hi. Thank you for that advice. I have a question about sort of mental stamina. I'm grateful that I'll be interviewing, um, but it'll be a full day, like 8 hours over Zoom. And I feel like that's even more like taxing, I think, than possibly like an in-person interview. So I'm just wondering sort of what you would recommend as far as like making it through the day. Um, Besides
Absolutely.
like prepping for the
Yeah.
questions and other things. Yeah.
So, if it's a multi-hour interview situation, which they pretty much all are, there will be breaks scheduled in there. Okay. Because people need bio breaks and all sorts of things like that. Um, my recommendation is to have treats, treat culture. Okay. So whatever your favorite thing is, like if it were me, I would have a Bueno bar and a Dr. Pepper. Okay. Those are my things. And also probably like a list of songs queued up that help me recenter and like feel more like myself. So whenever you have a break, take it. Okay. Get up from your computer, walk around, do your stretching, say nice things to yourself. I mean, this all sounds cheesy, but it is really important to do this self-care. Okay. Um, you should have a good number of breaks in there because they know it's kind of a marathon, but you guys should expect some mental duress. Okay. So you're going to be meeting with multiple people, sometimes people back to back to back, where maybe you have like 3 to 4 minutes of transition time between them. And so that's stressful. Okay. Meeting multiple brand new people, strangers, right back to back can be hard, right? Especially when you feel like you have to be on the whole time. So be prepared for that. Get yourself your little treats. Make a plan for what you're going to do when interviews are over. Like have something that you're looking forward to, whether it's going out with friends or family, or it's getting to do something that you've been looking forward to and have been kind of saving. We just want to make sure that you've got something to keep you going, okay, and little rewards for yourself. There was another question here about emails. Yes, if you have the email address, go ahead and send it. We don't need 8 paragraphs. Don't do that. Ain't nobody got time for that. Okay. But what we do want is like a paragraph of sincere thank you. And if you remember something relevant about the interview, or if you feel like you really vibed with your interviewer, then like a detail about that conversation just to remind them what you talked about can be really helpful and specific. Okay. Um, One other thing, what was it? What was I going to say? Oh, how do you know if you've had a successful interview, right? That can be really important. Like for me, I want to know how to go, and it can be hard to tell in the moment how it went. So what you're looking for is, did you like vibe with at least one person that day? Okay. That's kind of how to tell. And it seems like a small thing. But if at least one of the people you talked to, you felt like you really hit a stride, or you said something and they were like, yeah. And it felt like they really understood what you were saying, or they said something that really resonated with you and you guys like communicated about that, that those are memorable moments. Those are the kind of moments that are gonna get you brought up when the admissions committee is talking about all the applicants after interviews. We want those little vibing moments. So we want these to be conversations. Not everyone that interviews you is going to do that with you, right? Not everyone is going to be open and inviting, which is dumb. But sometimes people just aren't going to respond very openly at all, right? So you just do your best. And if you had like, it can throw you off if you feel like your interviewer is a little cold. That can be distracting, or you can feel like you're doing something wrong. Just know it's not about you, right? That could just be them. So we're not looking for vibing with every single person at every single interview. That's not a reasonable goal. But if there was like at least one person that you felt like you made a connection with, or if they paused and after you gave your answer and just kind of acknowledged the the insight kind of that you gave, or that was an interesting perspective, you did it. Okay. Doesn't necessarily mean you'll match there, but it means that you said something that they're going to remember and can discuss later. Other questions? Let's see.
Real quick, just to Reem, you asked, should you send an email to each of the interviewers, even if you didn't interview with them? No, I was referring to sending an email to each person that you had an interview with, not all of the people on the interview committee or admissions committee. I want to just real quick, we're out of time. For those of you who are reapplying, I actually really like talking to reapplicants for a moment. I have a soft spot for reapplicants. So I just want you to know, number one, all programs are really excited to see reapplicants. Um, so it's not considered a knock or a negative if you're reapplying to a program. Like they're not like, oh no, not this person. They're actually like, oh, this person's back. Like, let's see what they've learned. They actually are looking at you positively. One of the biggest reasons is because they ask a question like, how do we know that this person is passionate? How do they know that they're really serious about, coming to our program or becoming a genetic counselor? You can say that and talk about it in your application and maybe even in your interview, and it feels very theoretical. But when you're a reapplicant, that is a physical demonstration of your persistence, your passion, and your motivation to become a genetic counselor and potentially even for that program because you're reapplying to that program. So I just want to just say that out there because some people feel like, oh, it's a bad thing that I'm reapplying. And actually, schools see it as a very positive thing. The other side to that coin, though, they see you very positively. The other side to the coin is they're expecting more from you. They're expecting more insight because now you've had more time to gain more insight during the time from your first application to this next one. And so that insight formula that I gave earlier, just really dig into that and just make sure that like you feel confident with the what, how, and the why. And also in terms of growth and what you've learned and dealing with challenges, you can call out this as being a big challenge for you. The fact that you didn't match last season, how did you feel about that? I felt depressed, sad, frustrated, confused, all of it, none of it, whatever you felt. And then, but this is what I found. I found that I went back and I talked to more genetic counselors, and I actually feel more confident now. I have had experiences that I didn't have before, and now I'm even more excited, or I learned this about myself. So speak to that. The idea of you not matching can be the example of your resilience, of your ability to learn, and it's certainly a physical demonstration of your passion for the field and for that program. So I just wanted to say that for all my reapplicants who are on and watching.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay, a question from the chat here. Like if you have two interviews, like interviews with two schools on the same day, like how to keep them straight and not be frazzled. Yikes, that sounds not fun. What what I would do is probably pull up on your desktop, like have your interview, um, up the video up, and then just either make a sign or have like something there that's saying like what program it is, the things that you really like about or are interested in that program, and like other nuances about that school that you want to remember. And I would like just keep that in front of you as a reminder, right? And then when that school's interview is done, pack that all away, put it where you cannot see it anymore, get out the same information for the next school, read through that, and just like take a mental break and just try to transition. But you really want to have those cues to like not mix them up. So I would find visual cues helpful. But you do you based on your own learning. Okay, we have another question here. How to prepare for ethical questions, especially if you're not that knowledgeable of like clinical genetic counseling and clinical genetic knowledge? Yes, that's a great question. Um, the the best answers for ethical questions, and Janelle chime in too here if you think anything different or have more to say. The best answers are ones that most support patient autonomy, right? That's what we're all about. So if there's an ethical question, even if they're not patients, like what option, what outcome, what um, like decision can you make that is best to figure out what they want and need, and then how you support that, right? Because that's what our job is. Um, there's so many possible ethical questions that could be asked. It's hard to prepare for any one in particular. But and you don't even necessarily have to come up with the right answer, but if you're showing that you are thinking about what the patient or the person in question could need, what kind of choices that you want them to be able to have, how to make space for them to exercise their autonomy, as long as you're showing that thinking process, then the final answer that you come to is like a little bit less important than showing that process that you understand that it's their decision and your job is to figure out how to help them get to the point of supporting their decision. Okay. Janelle, thoughts?
I actually agree with that. Autonomy is um, helpful. Um, yeah, I'm just thinking of some of the like some legal things that have come up, or like my sister's keeper type stuff. I know that those questions have come up. Like, what would you say to somebody, to a couple that's like having a baby because they want that baby to be like the bone marrow donor for their current child or something like that? Like, how would you deal with that situation? So I'm going back to what you said, autonomy is probably the best way to frame it as you think about what kind of answer that you would give. I don't know. This is gonna be, yeah, I mean, I don't know how much time you have between now and your interview, but if there's any like journal club meetings or like current event type things that you can attend between now and your interview to just immerse yourself in like what are the current topics right now in genetics and kind of like the legal realm, maybe even political. It seems crazy that genetics would be politicized, I know, but it has been, and so it's important to know what those are. Um, In absence of doing that, just try to answer to the best of your ability what you feel like would, yeah. I guess the autonomy is the best thing. I'm just thinking like what would be the least harmful to all the parties involved might be another way to look at it. Yeah. That's going to be tricky if you're not
Yeah.
exposed to things. So my recommendation is try to expose yourself if at all possible.
There are a lot of like genetic counselors out there who do journal clubs and have social media where they pose questions like this, and the GC Prep account follows a lot of them. So you are
Sure.
certainly welcome to stalk our following list to look for other content creators that are genetic counselors who do things like that. Um,
Mhm.
because there's just so many different types of ethical questions.
Mhm.
The goal is just really to get across that you're thinking about what could it be like from their perspective? Why might they want this or that or the other thing? Like trying to envision yourself in different parties' shoes and think about what they
Mhm.
might want, and not just what you would want in that situation, but what other people might want. How come, right?
I
So we
would say, oh,
want to support those choices. Mhm.
sorry. That's probably what the more important thing may not be what your conclusion on it all, but more just understanding how you think about this all. And if you can, what Michaela just said actually is probably the most golden thing. It's like if you can describe what you feel like each sitting in each person's shoes who's involved in the situation, and you're able to eloquently describe what that might be for each person, even that would show an insightful answer because it shows that you're thinking. You're thinking, even if you're like, "Ah, you know, honestly, I couldn't come to a conclusion because from this person's perspective, it might be this, and then from that shows thought and that you're seriously thinking about these things. And so even if you don't have an answer, that would be really helpful if you were able to do that and be able to say it out loud.
I mean, you're going to have classes on ethics in grad school, and
Yeah,
a lot of what happens in those ethics classes is there's no right answer. We're just discussing it, right?
right.
So we're not we're not specifically looking for right answers here. We want to know that you've thought about it, and you're considering the autonomy of all parties. Okay. Other questions? We have gone 11 minutes over. I apologize, but it does happen each time, and I did warn you. So any other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or just bring them up if you want to say it all out, totally fine. Um, and then we'll be done for the night. Any final questions? No? Okay, well, thank you guys so much.